Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here tonight. I'm Stesha Brandon, the Literature and Humanities Program Manager at the Seattle Public Library. As we begin today, I would like to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land. These are the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish people. We honor their elders past and present and thank them for the stewardship of this land. Welcome to today's program, Take a Stand, Art Against Hate, presented in partnership with Raven Chronicles Press, Third Place Books, and Seattle City of Literature. We would like to thank Author Series sponsor Gary Kunis and the Seattle Times for generous support of library programs. We're also grateful to the Seattle Public Library Foundation. Private gifts to the foundation from thousands of donors help the library provide free programs and services that touch the lives of everyone in our community. I have a couple quick announcements before we get started. First of all, the wonderful folks at Third Place Books have copies of this new Raven Chronicles Press collection. Third Place Books are open for limited browsing or for curbside pickup or delivery, and you can order the collection through their website, thirdplacebooks.com. I also wanted to let you know that after the readings conclude, we'll have time for your questions. You can type your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen at any time during the program. Now I'm delighted to introduce Anna Balint, who will moderate tonight's event. Anna Balint is a London-born, Seattle-based poet, writer, editor, and cultural activist. Her many years of editorial work for Raven Chronicles Press include Take a Stand, Art Against Hate, and Words from the Cafe, an anthology of writing by people in recovery. Her short fiction collection, Horse Thief, spans cultures and continents and was a finalist for the Pacific Northwest Book Award. A longtime teacher of creative writing, Anna currently teaches adults in recovery from trauma, addiction, mental illness, and homelessness at Seattle's Recovery Cafe, where she founded Safe Place Writing Circle. Anna will introduce this evening's readers and talk a bit about the new collection. With over 170 contributors, including Jericho Brown, Lucille Clifton, Marge Piercy, and Dana Smith, Take a Stand features poetry, artwork, essays, and fiction that confront past and ongoing injustices and offer visions of positive change. Please help me welcome Anna Balint. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you, Stesha, so much. And thank you to all the presenters for tonight. I also wanted to, just on behalf of Raven Chronicles, mention a few more people we need to thank. The many sponsors of this and other Raven events that have happened this year, which includes Poets and Writers for partial support of writers, For Culture of King County, the City of Seattle's Office of Arts and Culture, and the Washington State's Art Commission with National Endowment for the Arts funding for the project support. I'm one of the editors of this anthology, and it was a real honor and challenge to be an editor for this anthology. And I'd like to extend my thanks to Phoebe Bochet and Thomas Hubbard, who were my fellow editors, and the three of us. Having three people really made a difference. And also to all the artists and writers who were in the anthology, as well as those who contributed work that didn't get accepted, because all of that helped enrich the soil that this anthology grew out of. And of course, the anthology I'm speaking of is this beautiful book, Take a Stand, Art Against Hate. And ironically, originally, we were lined up for an opening event at the library last spring, and then the pandemic came along. And so we've had to wait until now. But I should say that Phoebe and I, in planning this event for tonight, we sort of put our heads together about timing, what date to choose. And we decided that the day after inauguration would be a very good date to do this. At the time, we had no idea what the outcome of the presidential election would be. We knew that we were heading into a period of chaos and turmoil and danger. But we felt that regardless of what the actual outcome of the election was, the inauguration itself, which is sort of a time for a new beginning, a reset, was a very, very good time, regardless of who was actually in the White House, to boldly stand up and take a stand against hate. So that's why we chose this date. And I think many of us are very relieved, some joyous that we do not have a certain individual back in the White House, that we have President Biden instead. At the same time, I think we know and understand that that doesn't mean that our work is done, and that the roots of hate began way before Trump became president, and that to really address hate means going back and confronting the 400 years of history, essentially. So with that, our struggle goes on, and tonight's event is actually both a celebration and a form of resistance. So at least that's how I like to see it. That said, I'd like to introduce our first reader, who is Tess Gallagher, who is both a national treasure and a Northwest treasure. Tess's 11th volume of poetry, Is Not, was published in 2019 by Graywolf Press. And Midnight Lantern, New and Selected Poems, which was also from Graywolf, is the most comprehensive offering of her poems to date. She spends time in a cottage on Loch Arrow in County Sligo in the west of Ireland, and also lives and writes in her hometown of Port Angeles, Washington. So please, everyone, welcome Tess Gallagher.
Thank you, Anna. I'm very happy to have been invited, and this is an extraordinary anthology, and I hope those who are listening will buy it for themselves if they don't have it, and give it as gifts. The poems are incredible. We were invited to choose a poem to read by someone else, and I am going to read the first poem in the anthology by Tanega Winder, and it is called Love Lessons in a Time of Settler Colonialism. And we were supposed to say why, and my mother was Native American. This is a picture of her. She came to the Olympic Peninsula before I was born in about 1941. And it was not a very auspicious place for Native Americans. And while I was growing up, that was also the case. But that is changing here. And it's changing through education and through the tribal energies themselves, and inclusiveness of energies of the whole community. So, but this poem is quite a serious poem, and it involves the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women in America. I have given a site which is on the chat there, and I recommend that you look it up and become informed. It gives you 51 states and the number of women missing and murdered in those states, and the Northwest especially is present there. Alaska is present. We have too many. The Indigenous people are reclaiming the data on their tribal members, and finding an ability to advocate for women killed or missing off the reservation has been important. Savannah's Act, you can read about that on the site, which is a federal bill to collect data on missing and murdered women. So this is the poem. I am not murdered, and I am not missing. but parts of me have been disappeared. Leanne Simpson, it's the epigraph. In my poetry workshops, I ask my students, if you could have any superhero power, what would it be? All of the Indigenous girls respond, invisibility. They too know all too well that some cracks were built just for us to fall through. We live in a world that tries to steal spirits each day. They steal ours by taking us away. From industrial schools to forced assimilation, genocide means removal of those who birth nations. Our living threatens. Colonization has been choking us for generations. I tell my girls they are vessels of spirit, air to lungs expanding. This world cannot breathe without us. There are days I wish I didn't have to teach these lessons, but as an Indigenous woman, silence is deadening. There is danger in being seen. Our bodies are targets marked for violence. We carry the earth's screams, me too, inside of us. A howling wind, our mothers and their mothers swallowed these bullets long ago. The voices ricochet. I wish I was invisible. I wish I was invisible. I wish, echoes in my eardrums. We know what it's like to live in fear. Colonialism's bullets sits cocked, waiting behind a finger on trigger. We breathe and speak and sing for survival. We carve out in lines. We write, I know joy. I know pain. I know love. I know love. I know lessons we've carried throughout time. Should I go missing? Don't stop searching. Drag every river until it turns red and the waters of our names stretch a flood so wide it catches everything. And we find each other whole and sacred, alive and breathing and breathing and breathing. Now we watched the inauguration and I think it was very impressive to me, this request that we learn to listen to the other side. And although that we may have very many differences, nothing is going to move in a way that we can come together unless that takes place. Our former President Obama said that. And I spent about 50 years of my life in Ireland, and there we are rather used to listening to a lot of people with different ideas. And we have something there which I recommend here. And it is a sideways managing of difficult encounters. And it has to do with humor. And so this poem of mine probably has taken on that influence. And I recommend that and hope it will come into play and help us. This is entitled In the Too Bright Cafe. It has an epigraph from a wonderful poet, Jaime Sabines, Mexican poet, a book of his called Tarumba. I was given this book by Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu, the great Mexican filmmaker, who's my friend. And the epigraph is, let's walk arm in arm like two jaundiced moles and see if the Lord of Tunnels will guide us. The men are comparing killing methods for moles. I'm ashamed to say my ears prick up. Moles have tunneled into my potato patch, erecting fluffy earth-filtered cathedrals both sides of the fence. What are they up to down there with my baby eye sprouted potatoes? They could be cousins, potatoes and moles, each turning the earth's darkness into something edible or a way to thieve what light is always holding back. Once I caught my yard help stomping the dirt over their openings, like putting out underground fire. Gas. The collaborators in eradication are pumping it into tunnels as they drink black coffee and tuck into eggs over easy with hash browns. Burn 'em. Pellets, some kind of poison. They mull this, asking for salsa and Tabasco. Are they sending down heat-seeking devices? Just don't say dynamite, I'm begging. A voice by the window claims he heard of a guy who hooked up a loudspeaker and piped in so many decibels the moles popped up like mushrooms and you didn't have to pick them off with your shotgun because they just kept running. The men are laughing by now, and I'm thinking, they're just talking, right? That merry cash register by the door is ushering a regular out, allowing the moles a brief reprieve. The men wave their friend onto the street as I holster my purse. My sympathies buzz the enormous windows like doomed flies, those reverberating in plain sight in the corners where darkness will fall and everyone above ground will have gone somewhere to sleep this all off. Me, I'm opening a little cafe of the mind where moles can talk to flies. Intricate labyrinths under the apple trees and glassed in fantasies of escape at head-high altitudes, moles paddling through earth or flies foozling the air over steak on a campfire near the ocean. Moles will claim daylight oxygen overrated, preferring air filtered by darkness on the run. Flies utter, "What cute snouts you have," and moles have to consider life with wings. By the time I get home, they've unionized and are working out maternity leave and pensions. Above it all, elk antlers wait for tinsel and mistletoe or tune into moles going on and on, rhapsodic about ants after rain. But because I'm the boss, I interrupt at the top of my smart-ass boss voice. Hey, how about a little respect? Whose cafe is this anyhow? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tess. It was a joy when that arrived, that poem, because one of the things that we decided was that this anthology had to include humor. Humor is essential. And so, that was a breath of fresh air when it arrived. I also thank you for choosing Tanaya Winder's wonderful poem, Love Lessons in a Time of Settler Colonialism, which is actually the opening poem in the entire anthology. It opens the legacies section. And one of the things that as editors we had to figure out, flooded by all these different submissions and things that we wanted to include, was how to organize this and how to have the book sort of flow from some kind of logical beginning to the end without boxing things off from one another. And we decided that it was essential that we root this anthology in US history and in the history of colonialism, the genocide of Native people, and enslavement of Africans, because that's kind of like the foundation stone, accompanied by the myth of white supremacy, that everything else is being built upon. And so we needed to begin there. And one of the things I love about this poem that Tess just read is the way that the poet weaves back and forth the voice of the present and the past, the present of the murdered and missing Indigenous women, while also calling out the history of colonialism as sort of like where it's rooted in, where she says colonialism has been choking us for generations. So we start out the anthology in this way with history, and it kind of weaves its way through up to the present and into the other sections, which I'll talk about later. And the next reader is Lawrence Matsuda, who actually has a poem that is very much part of that history later on in the period of World War II. So it's great to have Lawrence read next. Lawrence Matsuda was born in the Minidoka, Idaho concentration camp during World War II. And in 2010, his book of poetry, A Cold Wind from Idaho, about the World War II forced incarceration of Japanese Americans, was published by Black Lawrence Press. In 2019, he completed a novel based on his mother's experience entitled My Name Is Not Viola, published by Endicott and Hugh Publisher. So please welcome Lawrence Matsuda.
Hello, and thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
And welcome, everyone. My name is Lawrence Matsuda, and I'm reading two poems from Take a Stand Against Hate. As was stated earlier, I was born in the Minidoka, Idaho War Relocation Center, which was an American concentration camp during World War II. We lived in Block 26, Barracks 2, and as a result of this experience, I learned very early on that there are at least two Americas, and we lived in the one with less justice. And the situation reminds me of what Jim Thorpe's son said about his father, the famous Native American athlete. It was something like, Dad learned to walk as one man in two worlds. My first poem deals with the topic of the forced incarceration of 120,000 Japanese Americans and its effects and lingering after effects. Often people ask, why did the forced incarceration take place? Presidents Reagan, Bush Sr., and Clinton stated three causes in their letters of apology to the Japanese. And those causes were racial discrimination, wartime hysteria, and failed leadership. So those were the three causes. In comparison today, how are we doing as a country in terms of racial discrimination? Wartime hysteria, which was called propaganda then, and now it's called fake news and just out and out lies. And finally, failed leadership. Hopefully, our new president will do significantly better than the past regarding these issues. To understand my first poem, The Noble Thing, the key vocabulary word is shikataganai in Japanese, and it means it can't be helped. The noble thing. Dad never talked about Minidoka. That was the noble thing. Before World War II, there was Garfield High School for him, ice skating on Green Lake, dances at Lake Wilderness Lodge, later his ownership of Elk Grocery on Seneca Street. He and Mother were married in 1941, 10 months later to be removed, forced into the Minidoka concentration camp. Mom was 5 months pregnant in August with my older brother, Alan. With blackout curtains drawn, the train left Puyallup and climbed the Cascade Mountains until the land flattened and the inescapable sun transformed the train cars into a moving sauna. People gasped small, panicked breaths from the superheated air. Shikataganai. It can't be helped. The train stopped by the side of an unmarked road in the Idaho desert, released its passengers miles from any station. Rumors spread they would be shot or marched to death, their bodies stacked, then carted to some awaiting ditch. Nowhere to run, they walk in their best shoes in the gritty sand as on the face of the moon. The heat caused some to faint as they carried all that they could. 3 years later, Dad returned to Seattle after the war, developed a bleeding ulcer, lost his janitor job at the Earl Hotel. Depression took Mom away. Like invisible armed guards, she was a stranger, a stick-like figure with arms and legs poking out of a white smock, pacing the sidewalk next to the Western State Hospital turnaround. Dad never talked about it, none of it. I never heard him say the word Minidoka. Gaman, endure the unbearable with dignity. Shikataganai, my best friend's mother chose pills for suicide. After school, Randy, my neighbor, opened the garage door and found his father in a black suit, his best, hanged by the neck. Shikataganai, the same path other Seattle Japanese chose. Numbers unknown. Shikataganai. We, however, never talked about it. That was a noble thing to do. The next poem is about mushroom hunting by Anna Odessa Linzer. Living in the other America as a child, I remember going mushroom hunting for pine mushrooms or matsutake near Mount Rainier, and it was a quintessentially Pacific Northwest Japanese experience. In the fall, my father, my grandparents, and I searched the forest for matsutake. Dad taught us to leave the red mushrooms for the Italians, chanterelles for whites, and we picked only the matsutake. This poem reminds me of those days. Almost Forgetting, Anna Odessa Linzer. The maple leaf yellow against the rain-brightened green of thick moss, coming up and alongside the fallen branches, strewn as if a crazy puzzle made to throw me off. But they are there, everywhere I turn, chanterelles, and our baskets fill as we move alone, but always within a whistle reach. I bend, and with each snapping pull against my fingers, I feel the dark bats of discontent fly from the windows of the attic I call my mind. Only golden yellow, only green, only the gift of soil and rain and forest, and something as pure and bright and unknowable in its trueness as love. And then I stand to stretch, only then seeing what the simple harvest had let me forget, the clear cut around me. Thank you all very much. Have a good evening. Be well, and sometime soon when this coronavirus is over, I'd like to see you in person. So take care and good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And I'm looking forward to that day too, of seeing everyone in person. In fact, even though here we are virtual tonight, in my imagination, I'm in the downtown Seattle library, looking out where actually you can see people and talk to them before and afterwards and hug them. On the other hand, we can reach further right now. We got people from all up and down the west coast of this country in this reading tonight, which is exciting. Larry's reading made me think of one of the epigraphs that appears in this anthology. Each section begins with an epigraph. And I walk in and out of several worlds each day. It's by something that Joy Harjo said. And I think that's so true. And it feels linked also to Anna's poem that Lawrence just read, because even though she's talking about mushroom picking, the almost forgetting the clear cut around me, it's like a metaphor for the fact that so often it's easy to get focused on the world that we know or what's directly in front of us, so that we forget or almost forget or sometimes refuse to see the larger picture. And I love the way her poem captures both the element of the beauty of the gift of our planet and the way that it sustains us, as well as the danger of forgetting what's beyond our immediate experience. Our next reader is Tiffany Midge, who comes from, actually she comes from Idaho. I'm just going to say Eastern Washington, but that's not right. Tiffany Midge is a member of the Standing Rock Sioux Nation and was raised by wolves in the Pacific Northwest, which probably explains some things. Her book, Bury My Heart at Chuck E. Cheese's, was a finalist for a Washington State Book Award and selected for Spokane as reading. And if you haven't read that book, I recommend you get your hands on it. It's a lot of fun with a lot of truth. So welcome, Tiffany. Hello, Tiffany.
I don't know if you can hear me. It says that the moderator has to start my video. Oh, there I am. I don't know if anybody can hear me.
We can hear you.
Oh, great. There's like this weird delay that I haven't been able to work out. So hi, hello everyone. I'm Tiffany Midge, and I'm here to read today from my basement apartment. And I wanted to begin and thank you so much to the Raven Chronicles and to the Seattle Public Library for hosting this event. This is a wonderful anthology. They did a really fantastic job with it, and I'm really pleased to be a part of it. So thank you so much. The first piece that I'm going to read is called The Border is a Line by Ray Gonzalez, on page 160, if you would like to follow along. The Mexican border is a line between faith and the shackled dream. When people cross it, the highways lead north and west. When they are stopped and taken, the green vans go south. The border is a line between imagination and the truth. Those who make it will not return. The line leading to bodies in lost graves. The line extends from birth to death through though the mountains get in the way. The line curving around them to gather strength. The line becomes a long sentence when the labor matters. Survivors straightening the line to align it with the relentless sun, stars falling above the hole where they hide. Even the bloodline from a plastic bottle of water to a picture of La Virgen de Guadalupe is sacrificed at the wire because the Mexican border is a line between faith and its sharpest point, a line that is infinite, unstoppable, and keeps coming this way. The other selection is a piece that I wrote. It's on page 270 if you want to follow along in your hymn books. It's a piece called Attack of the 50-Foot Lakota Woman. And I wrote it during the Standing Rock water protector demonstrations or protests, whatever you want to call them. It was funny because at the time that the essay will tell you basically, but at the time that the protests were happening, in the next state over, there was this 50-foot statue that was being installed along the banks of the Missouri to stir up tourism. And it just tickled me a little bit because of the fact that, you know, it would be really nice if that statue came alive because she was exactly 50 feet tall. And it would be really interesting if she were the second coming of the 50-foot woman from television, not or from TV media, old time B movies, that kind of thing. Okay. Attack of the 50-Foot Lakota Woman. In September 2016, a 50-foot monument bearing the likeness of an unnamed Lakota woman, replete with a blowing in the wind star blanket shawl, was installed upon the banks of the Missouri River in Chamberlain, South Dakota. Her creator titled the giantess sculpture, Dignity. At the time of Dignity's launch, if you followed the Missouri River to the north, another launch took place. Concussion grenades, water cannons, rubber bullets, dog attacks, a launch of incalculable greed and disregard for life. The No DAPL, Dakota Access Pipeline protests, demonstration, and standoff was an event on a scale which the world had never seen, and it sparked universal awareness and attention towards the most critically urgent issue of our time, protecting the water. Mini Wachoni, water is life. The Dakota Access Pipeline Project is expected to cover, was expected to cover, I should say, these tenses, are expected to cover 1,172 miles and to connect the Bakken and the Three Forks production areas in North Dakota to Patoka, Illinois. The pipeline will enable domestically produced light sweet crude oil to reach major refining markets. The pipeline cuts straight through ancestral lands sacred to the Standing Rock Nation and threatens their main water supply, the Missouri River, Minnesota. LaDonna Bravebird Allard, Standing Rock Sioux and Tribal Preservation Officer, owns the northernmost land of the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. The northern border is the Cannonball River. The eastern border is the Missouri River. From her land, you can see the pipeline corridor. The land that she grew up on tells the history of this river back 2,000 years. When I think of the Dignity sculpture and the militarization and standoffs in the small, otherwise peaceful communities of Standing Rock, where my own mother and my grandparents were born, and specifically when I think of monsters in regards of the Black Snake prophecy, I cannot help but think of the 1958 creature feature, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. In the movie, A rich socialite encounters an alien life form and is transformed into a giantest 50-foot she-beast. The King Kong-sized woman goes on a rampage after discovering her husband in a bar with a no-good floozy. 8 industrial-sized hooks, 4 lengths of chain, 40 gallons of plasma, an elephant syringe, and an electrical fire later, she is finally subdued. The authorities responsible for successfully capturing and bringing her down holler things like, "I can't shoot a lady. What do you want me to do? Salt her tail?" In my reveries, the dignity sculpture breaks from her foundation, secures the blue star quilt firmly around her shoulders, and follows the Missouri River north to Cannonball, up to the Ocheti-Sakowin Seven Councils fire, straight into the heart of things, and gets to work killing the black snake. In my reveries, the authorities do not succeed in bringing her down. 8 industrial-sized hooks, 4 lengths of chain, 40 gallons of plasma, an elephant syringe, and an electrical fire. In my daydreams, she is not defeated, but victorious, and freeze-framed eternally, despite concussion grenades and dog attacks, water cannons, and rubber bullets. The land that she grew up in tells the history of this river back 2,000 years. What stories will this river tell in 2,000 more? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Oops, I've just turned my video off. There we go. Thanks, Tiffany. I always appreciate your sense of humor. It's so necessary. Okay, I'm actually going to read something, an excerpt now from the poem that I have in the anthology, which is in the We Are Here section. That's the section that follows legacies, and it speaks of the myriad of people that are in our midst that society tends not to see, chooses not to see, which can include people suffering from homelessness, mental illness, you name it. But also it's people who are overseas or have come from overseas, who are sort of like shut out, that we don't really want to deal with certain problems. And my poem's about the refugee crisis, and that's definitely true of the refugees. I live in the south of Seattle, and I live in a neighborhood that has a high refugee population, including many more recent refugees from different countries in East Africa. Mostly they're Muslim, but also like the people right across the street from me are from Laos, and sort of like there's also a lot of Vietnamese people and people who came here in the wake of the Vietnam War. And I think it's interesting to look at how the US, its policies, its wars, our climate footprint, etc., impacts people and contributes to the refugee crisis. I just looked up some facts before this reading today, and since 2009, the number of refugees in the world, this is UN statistics, has gone from 36.4 million people in 2009 to 86.5 at the beginning of this year, 2021. Like I said, I'm going to read an excerpt. It's on page 117, but it will be difficult to follow because this is an edited excerpt. And so it's not really going to sort of flow from what's on the page. Journeys. Pack no more than you can carry. Hurry. You have to leave now. Tomorrow may be too late. There is no time to pack. Run. Run, my child, just as you are. Soldiers in jeeps roared into our village and shooting began. Many were killed. We fled into the night, our village in flames. We cannot go back. We have nowhere to go back to. We spend our time hiding from airstrikes and barrel bombs. The bombs are every day, every day. Our city is falling, bodies buried in rubble. We pack only what we can carry and hurry away. We cannot go back. We have nowhere to go back to. Only the road or the trail, or not even a trail. Only the hard, dry earth, the cruel sun, children barefoot, walking one behind the other, mothers carrying babies, walking for days, sleeping under a tree up at sunrise, walk before it is too hot to walk, crossing rivers, fathers holding small children above their heads, crossing the White Nile, continuing to walk. Look at a map. Find Afghanistan, find Syria, Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia. See how the Red Sea separates two continents, Africa on one side, Asia on the other. Now trace these journeys. Afghanistan to Pakistan, Syria to Jordan, Sudan to South Sudan to Uganda, Somalia to Kenya. See the human rivers that crisscross the land. Do you know of Dadaab, the world's largest refugee camp and Kenya's third largest city? A city of tents, population 600,000. A city in the sand, sprawling and disappearing over the edge of the earth. But inside its gates, no warlords, no famine, no drought. Here are your blankets. Here is your water. Line up over there for food. Yes, it is true. A fence rings the camp with razor wire on top. You ask, why is it there? Is it to keep you safe from the outside world? Or keep the outside world safe from you? Oh, I am a refugee. That's my name now, refugee. Last night I dreamed I was back in my village, but when I woke up, I found myself here. Oh, how I wish I were back in that life before, the good life, before the soldiers came. Here there are food shortages. This month, only maize flour, no beans or rice, no firewood for cooking fires. Last month, no cooking oil. You see those young boys playing kickball? Do you hear how they laugh as they play? They are children born here, boys already home. They lived 3 generations of refugees under one ragged roof. Their parents and grandparents aching from waiting for a country to grant them asylum. Better to wait for a boat to a new life. Wait for 2 days, 3, maybe a week, no longer than that. While you wait, look across the water and dream. While you wait for a boat, your brother in Berlin waits for you. Dreams. A new country, a house, an apartment, a room, some place to come home to, a place with walls, windows, and a door, a table, some chairs, a bed, 2 beds, and a TV for the children, and maybe a balcony, some place to step outside and take in some air. The boat, when it comes, is an old fishing boat. Its motor is not good. The boat, when it comes, is an inflatable vessel too flimsy to cross the sea. The boat, when it comes, has a rusted hull and sits low in the water. Too low. So many boats, so many people. Weather worsens, waves toss, blue water turns black beneath stars. Morning, when it comes, is a mist. the only color, the orange of life vests, the only sounds, the chug, chug, chug of the motor, the slop of waves, and a baby crying. Thank you. Of course, that is not the end of the poem, and it's not the end of the journey, and it's certainly not the end of the story. And I hope that in addition to ending the Muslim ban, that we will see the US start to really open up to immigration, both from south of the border and also to people from overseas seeking asylum. We're a big country, we've got room. With that, I would like to welcome our next reader, who is Shankar Narayan. And Shankar is a Full Culture recipient for Claiming Space, which is a project to lift the voices of writers of color. Also his chapbook, Postcards from the New World, which won the Paper Nautilus debut series chapbook prize. In Seattle, he awakens to the wonders of Cascadia every day, but in his heart yearns east to his other hometown, which is Delhi in India. So let's please welcome Shankar.
All right. Thank you for that, Anna. And thank you very much for inviting me to read with such an incredible group of writers. I'm really honored to be a part of the anthology. And this is a book that's really quickly become a favorite of mine because it's helped me discover new writers whose work speaks to me. And it also has all of these writers and poems that were already favorites of mine even before I ever saw the anthology. And I think it's also a testament to just this powerful tradition we have in our community of the many long traditions of social justice writing. And I think it's important to acknowledge also that that is a tradition that's often devalued and not welcomed in our sort of mainstream white-centric writing traditions. I remember an incident that happened when I was coming back to writing, some years ago, and there was a white writer and teacher in our community who, sort of read one of my poems and then said with a little bit of derision, thank you for being the bearer of this message. And she wasn't actually thanking me, right? She was actually being sarcastic. And what she meant was that she felt like we got these messages of social justice, right, from enough other sources that we really didn't need writing to challenge racism, colonialism, empire, and genocide, right? Of course, many BIPOC writers and others in our community know, and looking at where we find ourselves today in America, we know, right, that this is exactly the kind of writing we need now, which is exactly why this anthology is so powerful. So speaking of thanks, I'm going to read you a poem of mine called Thanks. Of the two poems I have in this anthology, I chose this one back in December. And I'm glad I did, because I think it directly addresses those legacies of colonialism, racism, genocide, and empire. This is a poem that I've never actually read in public before. And I think, I sort of made that choice because the voice in this poem perhaps could be perceived as being radical, right? Or maybe more radical than the other poem. And for me, not a citizen, green card holder, and, still waiting for my green card renewal under this administration, it's felt like a little bit of a risk. But I decided to read this poem today simply because, I think just the act of fearlessly putting this kind of work out there, is itself an act of claiming space for this kind of voice. So this is on page 47 of the anthology, and it's called Thanks. They want your thanks. They want to pull it from your body under layers, American leather jacket and steel-toe Brahma boots, and then the places they know you are vulnerable. They claim birthright over your thanks. A rat half crushed on the margin of I-90, point of the spear of the army that invaded wilderness, clear-cut trees, and civilized you, and you are so grateful. Over unknown mounds that may be Indian bones, they want you to mouth your Indian thanks. Mouth red with remembered betel your grandmother chewed, but she'd say, remember, this is blood. How to give thanks with a mouth this sucker punched. They want your thanks for every Indian shot, every brown woman violated to produce every half-brown baby, even thanks for knowing the math in half-breed blood, 1/4, 1/5, 1/8, how memories reduce by generation, farther from Brits with mouthfuls of crumpets and tinned beef imported from England while you hungered for salt. And when they say you don't even remember, it was so long ago, you hear gunshots, the thanks they demand for trains that carried you to their jails, for every bullet fired into Jallianwala Bagh. Sometimes, when so much thanks is pulled from your body, every cell shrivels, every vein foreign, and all you can do is build a device into which you will pack all your gratitude, like ball bearings and nails, centuries of shrapnel from exploded countries still trying to piece their own digits back together to make a hand to touch anyone's cheek, controlled by a single beholden button on the screen of your cell, which you will tap with tears of thanks streaming an alluvium of Ganges down your face, so indebted, saying, thank you for letting me be here. Finally, you are, and who's to say you're welcome. So that's poem number 1. The second poem that I'm going to read is called Why Whales Are Back in New York City. This is the second to last poem in the anthology. You know, there's so many poems in this book that I love, so many poems that I could have chosen. But this one really spoke to me, you know, for a number of reasons. One is that I love that it's intersectional. You know, it addresses these themes of environment and race and identity that are kind of, you know, central to my writing as well. And I particularly love this reclaiming of these environmental themes for BIPOC writers, which, you know, have often been seen as the province of white writers. So that's a wonderful thing. You know, Rajiv is great. He's a fellow Kundiman fellow, and so I know him from that. He translates from South Asian languages, which is something I like to do. And he's just this, you know, amazing sort of queer intersectional human being of the South Asian diaspora. But, you know, perhaps the biggest reason I chose this poem was that I just, you know, when I read it, I just recognized the voice instantly because it sounds a lot like my own voice. You know, the way this poem is written, you know, from the themes to sort of the rhythms of it, to the form, to the line breaks, you know, just feels very familiar to me. And I think the choices that Rajiv made, you know, are pretty much the ones I would have made if I'd been writing this. And happily too, this is a hopeful poem. So you know, it'll be an antidote perhaps to the last one, and a little bit like a homecoming to read. So with that, Why Whales Are Back in New York City. After a century, humpbacks migrate again to Queens. They left due to sewage and white froth banking the shores from polychlorinated biphenyl dumping into the Hudson and winnowing Manhattan schools. But now, grace, dark bodies of song return. Go to the seaside, hold your breath, submerge. A black fluke silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline. Now ICE beats doors down on Liberty Avenue to the port. I sit alone on orange A-train seats, mouth sparkling from sings, no matter how white supremacy gathers at the sidewalks, flows down the streets, we still beat our drums wild. Watch their false god statues prostrate to black and brown hands. They won't keep us out, though they send us back. Our songs will pierce the dark fathoms. Behold the miracle. What was once lost now leaps before you. Thank you, everyone.
It's not letting me start my video. Okay, great. That's a relief. Hi again, everyone. And thank you, Shankar. And I don't know if people picked up on this, but one of the things that I love about the anthology that really came through those two poems was the way that different pieces in different sections sing to one another. There's a sort of echoing of thematically, the tone, the rhythms, all kinds of different ways. And it's like, it's almost like birds singing back and forth to one another from the treetops. And it was interesting in trying to decide what pieces belonged where, how many pieces we found could go in different places in this anthology, precisely because there's no sort of like rigid walls. There is this sort of, this openness where there's the call and response that goes through the entire anthology. So with that last reading, the theme of sort of the thanks of the immigrant, the what's expected of you to be given, you know, allowed into this country. And then that contrasted with the ICE raids at the end. But the main thing I think that comes through in Rajiv's Why the Whales Are Back in New York City is this thing that was mentioned, which is this element of hope, which is part of resistance. And that's why this poem it's the second to last poem, and both it and the one that follows very much sort of like end on that note of hope, and that resistance embodies hope and belief in a tomorrow. Our next reader is Henry Seven Renaud Jr., who is a Lindsay, California-based poet, book reviewer, short story writer, and essayist. He is the author of the poetry collection Freedom Land Blues, Transcendent Zero Press, and the e-chapbook, Physiography, I'm probably mispronouncing that, Physiography of the Fittest, Kind of a Hurricane Press. And I should also mention that Henry has a long history as an activist that informs his writing, his being, and his wisdom. So let's welcome Henry.
I'm on, but I don't know if anybody can see me.
We can see you and hear you.
Okay. The first poem I'm going to read tonight is the shorter of the two poems that I have in the anthology. This one is called The Saga of the Exit Wound. This poem includes some language that may not be suitable for the workplace, the literary journal that spouts inclusivity, or if you have kids in the room. This poem is not a trigger warning for the pure pussy weak of heart, nor not judge, nor jury, but witness to the only real failures are the ones from which we learn nothing. 1, every bullet believes that some people deserve to die. the way the hammer strikes the firing pin and the cylinder turns on its pawl. Every bullet's explanation point is combustion, a 45 caliber ballistic ambition rifling down a steel barrel, fixed on the hemophiliac horizon of its own authority. 2, from skin to status to America's no solicitors warning. Our fists like Teflon bullets because of the gunshot splayed Black children, because of the police chief soundbite, so ashamed, so unashamed of its own complicity, because we don't believe a word come out their mouth that speaks to what racism has produced. Our endeavored unrest that kept us marching and made us more alive than this nation of many nations, oppression of them that others look down upon, the squat of squalor in which we move and exist, gulping air from the cup of need carried in our cells like shrapnel, the stigma lodged deep within, the justice doorbells, out of order sign. 3, there's nothing more frightening than the dream come true, is what America looks like. 4, captured fireflies in a mason jar. We are always in someone else's country. We are witness, and commotion is the atmosphere we swim in. Our Blackness simply giving other people a chance to see us, electric as an excitation of call and response. Our neon hope, a slang, a shadow diction, twanged and siphoned off every hue but blues, because he would not comply, and we just don't want to explain anymore. Because she asked why. He was descending a dark stairwell, the Black child playing cowboys and Indians with his imaginary friend, white hat and sterling plastic pistol. She only wanted to finish her cigarette. The psychosis in her head terrified her so much the police had to suffocate her to make her stop screaming. He only wanted to buy an air rifle to shoo fly the crows, the thug or demon, media labeled a tabloid stereotype, resisting arrest, extensive furtive movements. He shot himself while handcuffed in the back of a police car. We feared for our lives. Okie doke. The second poem I have is by Anita. Is by Anita K. Boyle, and I picked this poem because it really represents what this book is about. There are political poems in there, and I have a quote by June Jordan, in which she explains what political is. Most of us, we think of, anytime you mention money, religion, or politics, the argument starts and it's strident and abrasive. But according to June Jordan, it's telling the truth. To tell the truth is to become beautiful, to begin to love yourself, value yourself, and that's political in its most profound way. June Jordan was a really smart lady, and I love this poem by Anita K. Boyle. It's called About Writing Political Poetry, and it's on page 127. I don't write political poetry because words on a page become trite, because there is a value to life I cannot put into words, because I am a simpleton. I don't write political poetry about liars or traitors or patriots. I don't write about the bias of the Electoral College, or about how corporations are now people, or how recent trade wars might adversely affect our lower and middle classes. I haven't written about our president, or how this one applauds dictators, shakes hands with tyrants, congratulates human rights abusers. I don't write political poetry because my words disappear in the wind. Because even though marching and chanting, the rattling of signs and the shaking of fists have happened, the tyranny continues. I am helpless and too stupid to make the slightest difference. I haven't written political poems because I am footless within history, have no leg to stand on, and believe that having no knowledge of a heritage has created the vast majority of angry white non-people who demand to be real without an understanding of just who they might be. Let's take a breath here. I would like to write political poetry. There are people coming to America. Right now, they are knocking at our borders. They are desperate and dirty. Their feet are blistered. They desire a safe place, a small haven to wash up, and to eat a decent meal without fear. But we've shut the door, locked it, built higher, longer, and sharper walls to keep them away. We've threatened these travelers with soldiers, taken their children, cursed and spat at them, sprayed tear gas on them as though they haven't cried enough, and insist they walk through a pinhole to gain the refuge they need. Our country is beautiful, but it is angry. Our country is spacious, but we are stingy. My country, 'tis of thee, let all that breathe partake. I don't write political poetry because I don't know where to start and wouldn't know where to stop. I want to thank Raven Chronicles and the Seattle Library, and it's a great anthology, and I'm really honored to have been a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. And I have to say that I think I was the first person that read your work, Henry, when it came in submissions, and I was really excited by the work because it was a very fresh and different voice and take. Looking at the whole saga of an exit wound, tracing the bullet in that kind of a way, and the story that it tells is just amazing. And I absolutely love the way that at the end of that poem, it just capsulizes who become the victims of the bullet. The Black child, someone wanting to finish their cigarette who was suffering from psychosis, someone wanting to shoo fly the crows, and the person that supposedly shot themselves in the back of the police car. Is just an amazing sort of like riff all the way through. I also love, there's a line in there that I think is very pertinent right now at the point that we are at in history, which is the only real failures are the ones from which we learn nothing. So that's a Henry Renaud original line. And now we come to our last reader for the evening, Penina Ava Tusali, who's, let me find what I've got here. Okay. Penina is a Samoan poet, educator, and cultural arts activist. For 9 years, Ms. Tusali worked as artistic director for the Oakland Asian Cultural Center in Oakland, California, where she founded the Asian Pacific Islander Youth Promoting advocacy, and leadership, Talking Roots Art Collective. Please welcome Penina.
Hello, everybody. It's really beautiful to be here with you all and hear all the poetry. And I'm happy to read last because I got to hear all the poems a lot of poems I haven't read in the anthology. But I'm going to start with Danez Smith. I'm going to read two poems, and I'm going to read Danez Smith's poem, Dinosaurs in the Hood. And one of the things I love about this anthology too is I didn't know about Danez Smith until I read his work in this book. And I chose this poem because its playfulness and the speaker really claims the narrative, which we all do as poets, but I feel like he's kind of a master at it. And I just want to give him a little plug out that he has a new collection, or his latest collection is Homie by Grey Wolf Press Publishers. And I didn't know about this poet, even though he's been nominated for the National Book Award. He's done so much work in his own community in Minnesota, St. Paul. And he reminds me of kind of my life in my earlier day working at the Cultural Center. So here we go. Dinosaurs in the Hood. Let's make a movie called Dinosaurs in the Hood. Jurassic Park meets Friday, meets The Pursuit of Happiness. There should be a scene where a little black boy is playing with a toy dinosaur on the bus. Then he looks out the window and he sees a T-Rex, because there has to be a T-Rex. Don't let Tarantino direct this. In his version, the boy plays with a gun, the metaphor, black boys toy with their own lives that foreshadow his end. The spitting image of his father, nah. The kid has a plastic brontosaurus or a triceratops, and this is his proof. This is his proof of magic or God or Santa. I want a scene where a cop car gets pooped on by a pterodactyl, a scene where the corner store turns into a battleground. Don't let the Wayans brothers in this movie. I don't want any racist shit about Asian people or overused Latino stereotypes. This movie is about a neighborhood of royal folks, children of slaves and immigrants and addicts and exiles, saving their town from real ass dinosaurs. I don't want some cheesy yet progressive Hmong sexy hot dude with a funny yet strong commending black girl buddy cop film. No. This is not a vehicle for Will Smith or Sofia Vergara. I want grandmothers on the front porch taking out raptors with guns, hidden in walls and under mattresses. I want those little spitty screaming dinosaurs. I want Cicely Tyson to make a speech, maybe two. I want Viola Davis to save the city in that last scene with her black fist afro picked through the last dinosaur long, cold-blooded neck. But this can't be a black movie. This can't be a black movie. This movie can't be dismissed because of its cast or audience. This movie can't be a metaphor for black people in extinction. This movie can't be about race. This movie can't be about black pain or cause black pain. This movie can't be about a long history of having a long history with hurt. This movie can't be about race. Nobody can say the N-word in this movie who can't say it to me in my face in public. No chicken jokes in this movie. No bullets in the heroes. And no one kills the black boy. No one kills the black boy. No one kills the black boy. Besides, The only reason I want to make this is for the first scene anyway. Little black boy on the bus with his toy dinosaur, his eyes wide and endless, his dreams possible, pulsing and right there. Okay, the next poem is a poem that I have in the anthology, and it's written in 4 parts, and there's some Samoan words that I just want to translate for you guys in here. So Umu means earth oven, Vasa means sea, Muanga means mountain, Messina means moon, Fetu is star. And the subject matter is about the refugee crisis. So I wrote this quite a while ago, and I tweaked it quite a bit. So it is on page, it's on page, I think 165, but I don't think you should follow along because it's changed just a little bit. So I'll do my best to give this poem what I got. It's called One Blood. It starts with an epigraph by James Baldwin. It's not a romantic matter. It is the unutterable truth. All men, brothers. All women, sisters. That's the bottom line. If you can't take it from there, you can't take it at all. Love has never been a popular movement. James Baldwin. 1. Is it the fluidity of light interlacing all of us to that gallant galactic vibration? Will the Earth's magnetic field shield the blue jewel Earth? If we are one blood, why all the bloodshed? If we forsake the shock of a child screaming in the dust, families blockaded under bombed out cities, banished from hard-earned livelihoods, won't the children's nightmares boomerang into our blood, stain our sheets? How do we sleep? In America, the short answer is Lunesta. Take your sleeping pills like good little soldiers until your drugs smother what is humanely possible. The simplest concepts have become extraordinary. Love thy neighbor as thyself. But the golden rule was a way of life long before the Bible seized our land. Preparing breadfruit, taro, and fish inside the umu. Father said, treasure is in the art of sharing. Cousin human, cousin Vasa, cousin Maunga, cousin Messina, cousin Fetu, cousin coconut tree, cousin drum, drum, drum. 2, I just need a drink. In Sweden, the Roma refugee children suffer from a resignation syndrome. Hearing the news that their family may be deported, the children go to bed and they do not wake up. They cannot move for days, weeks, months, years. They sleep inside a coma of despair. Depression shrinks the hippocampus, the part of the brain that triggers memory and emotion. And even if a family is granted asylum and they read the residency permit into their daughter's ear at her bedside table, she does not move. She is like a mannequin. It may take months or years for her to remember how to open her eyes, how to hold her head on her own. So she might find that her family is safe, is alive, living in Sweden. 3. Mrs. Morales, our librarian, said, people have every legal right to seek refuge from starvation, war, violence. We've come this far. Why are we afraid to love? Afraid of discomfort? Many or most Americans accept the looming dictatorship raging at our borders. They cheer, America first. Raging on our screens, we witness children forced from the arms of mothers and fathers, while prisons, private prisons, boom. Half the nation seems to be plunging into some cruel stupor. Merrily, they rip the wings off the exhausted bodies. And the other half of country is fiercely sober. Cousin to cousin, poet to poet, senator to senator, teacher to teacher. Where are the 1,500 missing migrant children? Where are they? The mother's tears wail into my ears. I want to know what you would do. A child is kicking, screaming, trying to get back into the arms of their mother. The Amber Alert is a sham. Your child is in a warehouse in a cage in the land of incarceration. Mrs. Morales asked, how many more days? What happened to special counsel? Why is coal mining waste dumped back into our rivers? The president sinks more and more every day, but remains afloat like styrofoam. 4. And we are here. We are here. And we are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are one rallying jamboree springing forth from that everlasting reservoir, just as real and countless as the stars, illuminating pathways for us to haven the vulnerable and the sick. The sovereignty of the heart, glorious. Instinctively, we leap forward to save the life of another because our own life does depend on it. Here, we gather, we lead, we scratch, we dig, we organize again and again the Underground Railroad. This is where we become harbor, human. That is the moment we become civilized. Thank you.
Thank you, Panina. I just wanted to mention that Dennis Smith, who wrote Dinosaurs in the Hood, he's also an incredible performer, and you can find him on YouTube, and I recommend checking him out. That last poem that Panina read, One Blood, says so much, and it sort of brings us to almost to the closing point of tonight's reading. But I think that the transition that we sort of have to make at this stage in history right now, this whole thing about unity and recognizing that we are one blood, and what does that actually mean in practice? Does unity mean that somehow we step away from the struggle for justice? Or that we have confidence that people have an ability to change, and that speaking the truth and standing firm helps to pull people towards us and not have us tug towards making compromises with white supremacy or any such thing. So I wanted to end with a poem, and it's not a poem actually, it's a piece of short prose that's on page 210 in the anthology that really speaks to this human element. And it's by Dr. Shahed Yousaf, who is a National Health Service doctor in England who's been on the front lines all the way through this pandemic. And I mean, it's like he's a perfect example of how, the rejection of immigrants and difference, and yet our very lives depend on grasping out and reaching and accepting the people in our midst, seeing them, seeing one another as the humans we are. I also wanted, before I read it, I wanted to just share another epigraph that sort of follows on Penina's reading, which is also from James Baldwin. And James Baldwin says, I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hate so stubbornly is because they sense that once hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with pain. And with that, Zero Tolerance by Dr. Shahad Yousaf. You shouted that you didn't want a Muslim doctor. I was angry when I said healthcare had zero tolerance for bigotry. You smelt of the iron in your blood and the tin in your hand. I had ketone breath from fasting in Ramadan. My brown hand held a stethoscope over your swastika tattoo. Awkward, I said, and you swallowed hard. The swastika is Indian, I murmured, and could feel you pulling away. I feigned surprise that you had a healthy heart and you laughed more than you needed to. You're all right, you said. Most humans are, I replied, and shook your hand. Thank you. And in closing, before I hand things back to Stesha and we have some questions and answers, I think that this epigraph, which actually is the very first epigraph that appears in the anthology in the sort of introductory section, is sort of what I'd like us to go away with this reading from and into tomorrow. Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. Arundhati Roy. And with that, I'm going to hand things back to Stesha.
Thank you so much, Anna. And thanks to all of our readers. I'd actually like to invite everybody to unhide their videos now so that the audience can see everybody that has been participating tonight all on one screen. That's so great to see everybody's face pop up. Hello, hello. So we have time for just a couple questions. And so I see here that we have 2 questions about your painting, Henry. So Henry, would you mind telling us a little bit more about your painting?
The painting is named Window Panes, and it's by a painter I met when I was going to college. She was completing her MFA at the time. Her name is Chelsea Gilmore, and I've had the painting now for about 11 years. And I've had it appraised, though I have no intention of selling it. It has inspired too many of my writing. And from looking at it, I finally realized there are 6 priestesses, female priestesses in the painting when you look at it. And I found out that she did it based on a stained glass window in one of the churches in Davis. And I look at it and it changes from time to time because along with these priestesses, if you look hard enough, other people come into the painting. So, I mean, it's really, and I was really lucky to get it. The first painting that I seen by her that I actually wanted to buy, it looked like, I don't know how many people have watched Stargate on when they go into that thing. Oh man, I really wanted that, but this young lady I know, she grabbed it quick. I came in that day, and so I got lucky for this. Instead of paying $1,500 for it, I ended up paying $300. I went to every show that she had, and she had a lot of them in the Bay Area and in Davis and Sacramento. And I went to all of her showings. Her paintings are fantastic. And this one is 6x6, and she does paintings now where she puts 4 6x6 canvases together. And I mean, they're just incredible, you know. And by the way, I am really honored to have been a part of this anthology, and the readers tonight. Wow, incredible. Incredible. You are all awesome.
Thank you. Yes, everybody was just, it was such a powerful evening. So we have another question here from an anonymous attendee saying, Shankar addressed this a bit, but I would be glad to hear from anyone else as well if they want to talk about it. How do you handle the challenges that come with writing poetry about social justice issues? I mean to ask about both the writing of it and dealing with the reception of it. And then in parentheses, it is brave to write poetry about social justice issues. And so, are there particular folks that would like to answer that? Or Anna, do you want to direct that question to any particular writer? Oh, you're muted.
I have something I would like to say about it. The first thing I learned, because all of my poetry that I write, I mean, even when I'm writing what I call mushy poetry, it's political. Because as I say, being political is just telling the truth. It's not being authentic, it's telling the truth. And once you tell the truth, you know, you can actually love yourself and value yourself. Because when you tell the truth, you're not trying to deceive someone, or you're not in fear. Because that's the only reason people lie, when they're scared to death or they're trying to deceive someone, one of the two. And you know, once you don't, your mind is clear, you got peace of mind. And so the first thing with writing political poetry, I had to work on not being so strident. I had that problem for years. I couldn't get because I would start writing it and it comes from the anger. You look at, you know, I hurt when I look at the world now. The so much pain. And I mean, we are a species that should have colonized Mars by now, the moon. But I'm glad we didn't, because we would take the same bad things we do here with us. So I think we have to evolve and learn to actually to love one another. Just that's where it should start, to really value someone else as much as you value yourself. Then we can go out into the universe.
I just wanted to say that as far as the anthology goes and the work that's in it, I very much doubt that the overwhelming majority of it, that anyone sat down and thought, oh, I'm going to write a political piece. Even though I love what Anita Boyle does in her poem about writing political poetry, I don't think that's the germ that things start. It comes out of people's experience in one way or another, or things that touch us in one way or another, that make us angry for some reason. There's some personal spark that feeds it. And that's why having diverse voices was so important for us in this anthology, because to get the authenticity of experience sort of coming from actual experience and not just people writing about things. So that's what I'd add.
Thank you for
wonder
that.
if Tiffany has something to say.
Okay, Phoebe. Oh,
I was
Tiffany?
asking Tiffany, she had something to say. No?
I'm seeing a head shake.
Okay.
Well, I'll just take a moment to thank you all again for being here. This has been just such a wonderful evening, and I think a good roadmap forward, maybe. So thank you, each of you, for being a part of tonight's event. For those of you who are interested in reading Take a Stand, it's available through the library at spl.org. I believe it's on order currently. I'm not sure if they've arrived or been processed yet, but you can reserve your copy on the library's website. Or you can get a copy at the wonderful Third Place Books. And as I mentioned earlier, Third Place is open for limited browsing or curbside pickup or delivery, and you can order through their website, thirdplacebooks.com. And thanks so much to tonight's presenters and to our wonderful program presenters, Raven Chronicles Press, Seattle City of Literature, and Third Place Books. We're also grateful to the sponsors, the Seattle Public Library Foundation and the Gary and Connie Kunis Foundation, and our media sponsor, the Seattle Times. And of course, we're grateful to all of you for joining us tonight. Thanks for spending the evening with us, and we'll see you next time.